Welcome to the Nickels and Dimes Finding Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and I look forward each and every week to bringing you amazing content that will provide you with a financial education, will support you on your financial journey, and most importantly, help you to find financial freedom. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Nickels and Dimes Finding Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and today I'm taking you through the Universal Wealth client experience. Why am I doing this? Well, I get asked all the time how I work with my clients and the ways that I help individuals and families to protect their life, health, and income. And so I figured it made sense to go ahead and dedicate a podcast episode to discussing that and getting the information out there, helping people to understand it's not a scary process. It's not an overwhelming process. It's not an expensive process. So I'm going to walk you through the general outline that I go through when I'm working with clients or potential clients and the information I share with them and why it's important. So let's jump in with the first area that I cover when I sit down, the start of the financial education, which is going over some of the top financial concerns that I hear most often, that my fellow agents hear most often when we're talking to clients. And they are rising taxes, inflation, market losses, outliving our money, becoming disabled, being able to leave a legacy, managing debt. And then finally, indecision. So why do we touch on those? Honestly, because like I said, that's what we hear the most. Those are the biggest concerns that our potential clients have. And they're the biggest things we each individually face every day. Like, think about it. Rising taxes. I mean, that's absolutely something we have no control over. We don't know when it's going to happen. The more money we make, the more we get taxed. The bigger house we buy, the more we get taxed. You know, it's election season. And I did research on the local, I don't know what they're called, the local school district amendments or whatever we were voting on this cycle. And whenever those changes happen in the school district you're in or in the city that you're in, it impacts the taxes you're going to pay, your property taxes and things like that. And so rising taxes are a huge concern for people, especially when sometimes they are rising faster than our income does. And then let's talk about inflation. Even more so, that rises greater than our income does on a standard basis. If you think about that 9-to-5 job, and you get a 3% raise every year, but inflation is between 5 and 7%. I think in some areas even higher the last 2 years, you're not keeping up with that. And that's why all the time we're seeing people struggle just to, pay the bare minimums, pay the utilities, get the groceries in the house, put food on the table. People are living paycheck to paycheck. They've been living paycheck to paycheck. And so now they're stretching that money even tighter, or they're getting that second job, or they're starting another business or something on the side that can help bring in additional income because they can't make ends meet. And then when you talk about market losses, this is something I'm going to talk a little bit more about in some upcoming episodes when I talk about how you can protect the money you're saving and put it in things like annuities that protect you from losing any of your money and give you the opportunity to continue growing it as well. And so depending on the plan that we're putting in place, the goals that you have, there are different tools we can use to help protect against those market losses. And most importantly, just make sure people understand how things like their 401k works and what you can and can't do with it, right? So talking about financial concepts and financial tools that meet the needs that everyday people like myself need. Everyday people like myself have, but everyday people like myself don't understand because there are things that I didn't understand when I first came into this industry. So then Okay, let's talk about some of the health side of things, becoming disabled. If you become disabled and you can't work, then what? What are you going to do? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to get by? I think about my mom in this situation. I say all the time, I wish I could go back 20 years and have started my business then, because my parents would have had some protections in place that they don't have now and can't qualify for now. With my mom's dementia, she can't qualify for living benefits. She can't qualify for a, a life insurance policy at this point. And so those things are off the table. So making sure that people understand the kind of things they can put in place to protect them if they become disabled. And then people are concerned about outliving their money. One, can I even retire? And how long can I live in retirement? When is my money going to run out? So, first, it's do I have enough? And then, second, when is it going to run out? That's a huge concern for people that we talk to every single day. And then, we all want to leave a legacy. We want to leave a mark behind, whether it's generational wealth for our children and our grandchildren, whether it's making a difference in our community, in our churches, whatever it may be, we want to leave a legacy behind. Are we going to be in a position where we can do that if that's important to us? Good grief, managing debt, y'all. This is a huge one, that I struggled with over the years as a single mom. I went through about a 5-year period of time where I got laid off 3 or 4 different times. And it began at the end of 2008. So with the market crash, the housing crash, all of that happened at the end of 2008, through about 2013. And it was just the impact hitting companies that reorganized, and I'd get laid off, and I was in a senior management position in corporate America. And so those jobs were not necessarily just a dime a dozen. People were getting laid off everywhere. And so it might take me 3 or 6 months to get another job. Well, I would lean on my savings. I would run out of savings and then lean on credit cards and then get a new job, pay off those credit cards, build up my savings, and a year and a half later, go through that same cycle again. And that's what people are facing all the time right now. How do they even begin to get by when, hopefully they're getting unemployment, but maybe it takes a few months to find that next opportunity? And how do you manage the debt in different situations that you get into? I mean, in my 20s, my parents told me, balance your checkbook and don't get credit cards. Well, you can bet your butt I did not balance my checkbook and I got credit cards. And luckily, I couldn't qualify for a whole lot on a credit card. But in my mid 20s, I was paying off a few $1,000s in credit card debt that I had amassed. And it's really easy to get the credit beyond the amount you can actually pay on a monthly basis. And then pretty soon you're making the minimum payments and you're just trying to figure out how many years it's going to take you to pay off that New Year's Eve outfit you bought, that vacation that you took, that you put on your credit card. And so we talk a lot about different concepts that fall into all of these different categories and make sure people understand the basics of financial literacy and then the tools, the products, the help that's available depending on your specific situation. Now, the final concern is indecision. People don't do anything because they don't know what to do. And they think I have all the time in the world, or I'm just going to keep paying the payments. Eventually I'll figure it out. Or it's going to cost me a lot of money to get help. And if I am barely paying what I need to right now, how's that going to work? And so they don't do anything at all, which is the worst thing somebody could do. And it's the number one reason why there is such a heavy focus at universal wealth. And for me individually in my business, on financial education, making sure people have the tools and the information to benefit themselves, even if it's one small step at a time. So let me kind of give some statistics now, some examples of how those things I just talked about can impact people, right? Real life examples. Okay. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And those who are working, 85% of them hate something about their job. They don't like the culture or the environment. Maybe they don't get along with their boss. Maybe it's just not a job that they love to do. Maybe they want more time back. They want more time to be able to take vacations, to spend with their family, whatever that might be. Maybe they just want the opportunity for advancement and they don't see that there. So whether people are making $1,000 or $10,000 a month, they're living paycheck to paycheck and they continue to do it because they don't know what else to do. They don't know how to put themselves in a position where they have more options and they're miserable at their jobs. Gosh, I think, if you think about the COVID pandemic and people working at home, I think there is such a large population of people who have shifted into being self-employed now, have seen the opportunity of working from home and that flexibility in their schedule and working from home at that time. This was huge for me. I said, I'm not going back to an office full time ever again. And that was when my mind started shifting to, I had my business. I was working at part-time. I had a great job at corporate America. I loved the people I worked with and I loved the company I worked for, but I never wanted to go back to an office full-time again. And so my mind was shifting to the idea of how do I transition into my business full-time? And a few months later, put together that plan, worked that plan. And here I am 3 years later, fully working for myself. Okay. So I think we've seen a lot of that transition, but the problem is, or the idea to do that, even some people doing it and struggling to be successful at it because they don't have the foundational information or they're not set up financially to be able to support themselves through the time it takes to get a business up and running. And so oftentimes I'm having conversations with people not only about their personal finances, but where they're at if they have their own business or maybe a side hustle or something they do and how they can build that and create whatever freedom or change that they're looking for by having that in place. And then if we talk about debt, are you kidding me? 80% of households in America have credit card debt. But get this, as of the second quarter of 2024, credit card debt totals over $1.14 trillion. That's trillion with a T. Now, that number was just under $1 trillion at the end of, I believe it was 2022. But think about that. Inflation has gone through the roof since then, and people are struggling to get by. So they're leaning on their credit cards even more than they have in the past. And that number is just jumping exponentially. Is it any wonder that when people have to do that, they feel like not only am I barely living paycheck to paycheck, I'm having to lean on my credit cards for some things, especially if an emergency comes up, and we'll get to that one in a second. But then they're like, how am I ever going to pay this off? How am I ever going to pay this off? Because the money I make right now is barely getting me through. So let's jump to emergencies. 49% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency. That's not a very big emergency because if your fridge goes out, your washer or dryer goes out, it's costing a lot more than $400. Good grief, if you needed 4 new tires on your car, it's going to cost a heck of a lot more than $400. And from personal experience, I've been in this position. As a single mom, I took a turn at a stoplight. I was turning right and I took it a little too fast and didn't realize where the angle of the curb was. And I hit that curb and I flattened 2 tires and ruined one of the rims on my car. Now, this was probably about 12 or 15 years ago. It was during that time frame where I was having a lot of job change and I was struggling financially, and I didn't have the money to replace those tires and replace that rim. And thank goodness I had a friend that was able to help me out for a period of time, and I was able to pay them back. But that was even a bigger struggle, that I had this additional debt that I owed to somebody, and I hated having that weighing on my shoulders. But I couldn't afford to replace those two tires. I think now two tires might even cost $400 depending on the vehicle that you drive. So it's really important to focus on making sure you're prepared for the financial emergencies that are going to come up in life as much as possible. So we talk a lot about an emergency fund and the impact that can make. And then we've got 51% of American adults have little or nothing saved for retirement. Little or nothing saved for retirement. Back to the question of, do I have enough saved for retirement? Can I ever retire? How long can I be retired? And that is the reason that we see more and more people of retirement age working into retirement because they have to. Now, there are a lot of people that do it because they want to. They want to stay busy. They want that interaction with people. They want the challenge of continuing to work, which is great. But a lot of those people have to continue working at jobs that maybe they don't love doing. Like, I know a lot of people who would like to be able to retire and not to sit around on their couch and do nothing, but to take their time back and have the freedom to do something they enjoy doing. And maybe they're able to make money on that in retirement. But they want the ability to have that choice. And there's so many people back in the workforce or continuing in the workforce into retirement that don't have that choice. They've just got to make sure that they can cover the bills. Social Security is not enough to take care of everything. Then on top of that, you have 40% of households that are uninsured. That means their life and their health is not protected. 158 million people at any given time, approximately 158 million at any given time, are battling with some kind of chronic disease. Again, that's back to my mom with dementia. She's battling a chronic disease. And that's where I referenced before, if I could go back 20 years and be doing what I do now, to have put protection in place, my mom would have what's called living benefits. And those living benefits would give her the ability to tap in to the death benefit amount on her life insurance policy and utilize those funds to fill in any financial gaps they might have. Now, don't get me wrong. I've told this story in different ways before. My parents did enough right things that they had money. And since they've come to live with me, we sold their house. We were able to put that money that they had saved, their retirement funds, and the money from the sale of their house into places that it's continuing to grow for the time being, because we don't need to tap into those funds yet. So they're very lucky from that perspective. Most people are not in that situation. Most people, when their kids grow and move away, they upgrade their house. They upgrade their lifestyle. My parents didn't do that. They stayed in that same little 1,800 square foot house my brother and I grew up in for 43 years, and it put him in a really good position. But they'd be in an even better position if, when the time came, we could tap into living benefits to cover some things instead of the money that they've saved to utilize in retirement and to leave as a legacy. And then finally, only 34% of adults show knowledge of at least 4 out of the 6 basic financial concepts that we teach, which means most Americans are not financially literate. We are not provided a sufficient financial education in our school systems. And it's sad. It's been going on for decades. My son learned very similar information in high school that I learned in high school 29 years before he did. So what little we're teaching, we're not even updating on a regular basis. And this is a huge focus of mine. A couple of weeks ago, I talked in an episode about the financial education program I created for the athlete program that I have with Universal Athletic Advisors. And that program takes a deep dive into the main components of financial literacy and making sure that these high school students and these college students I'm working with understand those concepts, understand how they play into their everyday life, into their financial picture, and into their goals. And then we start building a wealth plan based on those concepts. We put the foundation in place first. I was just on a training for my company and it was referenced perfectly. At Universal Wealth, we start with a financial foundation. We put protection in place very first for our clients. It's kind of like building a house. You lay the foundation for that house first. You don't hang a roof up in the air and work from the top down. You've got to work from the bottom up. And the stronger that foundation is, the stronger that house is, the longer it's going to last, the more it's going to withstand throughout the years. It's the same thing for your finances. You've got to build that foundation that protects your life, your health, and your income. And then you build from there in creating exponential wealth, generational wealth, leaving a legacy, all of those kind of things that come next. But we start with the education. We go to the foundation. So the education is like the blueprint, right? The education, we create the budget. That's the blueprint. And then we put that to work in building a foundation. And then on top of that, we build the walls. We put the roof. We install the windows, the plumbing, the electricity, all of the different things. But it's all done keeping the client in the driver's seat, making sure that we're addressing what's most important for them. Why do we do that? Because if somebody doesn't actually feel like their financial plan matches who they are and what their goals and dreams are for themselves and their family, what are the chances they're really going to stick to it long term? And if they don't stick to it long term, they put themselves further behind, years, decades behind, because they let a policy lapse. And then, God forbid, something happens health-wise and they can't get reinsured. Then what? So there's so many things foundationally we can create and build from over time to end up in a place of real wealth for our clients, creating the life of their dreams for them. But that all starts with those basic financial concepts and building that foundation. So I've talked a lot about, I feel like I've talked a lot in this episode, or enough in this episode, about the financial education. But the financial education breaks down into different categories. And I want to touch a little bit more on those categories now. And the first place we're really looking at is increasing cash flow for people. And I think the average person, or I'll reference myself, initially I thought increasing cash flow, okay, and I need to make more money. Well, yeah, sometimes that can be the answer to increasing cash flow. But there's other ways you can possibly do it too. And so beyond the education, or throughout the education, we're looking at what does this person in front of me, this family in front of me, have in place right now? What does their budget look like? What does their financial picture look like? Sometimes by analyzing that budget, looking at where they're spending their money, we can actually increase their cash flow by eliminating things they don't need, by reducing wants. I think maybe once or twice in very extreme situations, really challenged people to eliminate everything extra. But most of the time, people are in a position where if they just cut back in a couple of areas, they can start to make some significant difference in their savings, in paying down debt, whatever areas they need to focus on, just by reducing some of the wants for a period of time. And so going through that process can help identify those areas they can increase their cash flow just by making changes in their current financial situation, in their current budget, where they're spending their money at. And then, yes, there is sometimes the conversation of you need to make more money. The position you're in requires you to make more money. So what are some options for that? Is it the option of looking for a new full-time opportunity that pays them more? Is it the option of getting a part-time job, or starting a business on the side for a period of time to help supplement. And then oftentimes people will build on that dream to actually replace their 9 to 5 job through what they created that helped them get their arms around their creating financial freedom for themselves. And now they're like, I want the time freedom that goes along with that financial freedom. So we have all those conversations and dig in. If you want more information about budgeting, you can go back to episode 5. I talk a lot about money mindset, about budgeting in that episode. And then our next topic is eliminating debt. Eliminating debt, like I said, debt's crazy right now. And the numbers and statistics I gave before, over $1.14 trillion, that's just credit card debt. There's a whole bunch of other kind of debts out there that keep people strapped financially. So as part of that budgeting process, as part of looking at their financial situation, we're looking at their debt. And so in their overall wealth plan, when we get started, how do we eliminate debt and build savings at the same time? And so it's a strategy that we utilize based on their situation to get them out from underneath whatever debt they may have. And I work with some people that don't have debt, which is always great. Then we can go straight to the savings and long-term wealth building process. But most people do have some kind of debt. And so we're looking at how do we bring the debt down and increase the savings and give you more financial freedom, financial flexibility as you're building wealth for the long term. And you can go back to episode 11 where I really talk about mindset, the rule of 72. And so how quickly our money grows for us and then how quickly our debt grows against us, and managing debt. I really talk in depth in episode 11 about that. And then we're going to move to the next step, which is proper protection, protecting people's life and protecting people's health, as well as their income. And what does that mean? It's life insurance, you guys. And I know a lot of people think, oh, I'm young, I'm going to live forever, I'm super healthy, or that's a waste of money, or whatever it is people think when it comes to life insurance. I'm going to challenge you guys. I'm going to challenge you to do some research or reach out to me. And I'd love to share some information with you on how life insurance can be used as an asset. And life insurance doesn't just protect your life if you die too soon. It actually protects you if you live too long, like the example of my mom. Because the life insurance companies that I work with and the policies I put in place for my clients as their foundational products have living benefits. And so they plug the holes if somebody suffers from a chronic, critical, or terminal illness while they're still alive. And that, you guys, that can happen when we're young. It can happen in our 30s, 40s. It can happen for sure in our 60s and 70s. Over 65% of Americans are going to suffer with some kind of chronic or critical illness throughout their life. And if that doesn't occur for you, then great. You're part of the 35% that has a death benefit to leave behind when you graduate life. So that proper protection is part of building that foundation. Think about it. If you're the significant breadwinner in your family, or if you're single and you're the only income earner, what's going to happen if something happens to you, if you become disabled or face a chronic illness? What if you pass away? What's going to happen to your wife and your kids? Is she going to be able to continue paying the mortgage? Are your kids going to be able to go to college without having to take out student loans? Is she going to have to bring another partner into the house? Or is he, if you're a woman, is your husband going to have to, find another partner to fill in the gap of not having you there to help with the kids, to help pay the bills? And what you can't control is whether or not that person is somebody that's going to take care of them the way that you would want them taken care of. And not only that, people lose children, people lose parents. And that grief process can take a period of time. To be able to know that if something happened to me because of my life insurance policy, my son could actually take some time off work, not just to settle my affairs, but to not work for a period of time if he didn't want to just kind of adjust to what life is like now or is going to be like now. So that proper protection is so vitally important in the process. And then we talk about building wealth, right? So, okay, we've increased your cash flow, we're paying down that debt, we've got that foundational protection in place. What do you want your future to look like? When do you want to be able to retire? How much income do you need or want coming in every month in retirement? What does retirement look like? You want to travel? You want to have investment properties? What does that look like for you? And so building wealth for your future is that next step we take. Looking at how we prepare you for retirement and how we utilize the right products out there. If you want to retire before 59 and a half, cash value life insurance is the only financial product out there that you can access before 59 and a half without taxes and without penalties. So if that's a dream of yours, retiring before 59 and a half, you need to have a conversation with somebody or reach out to me and find out more about cash value life insurance and how you can build a bucket of wealth there that can get you to the point you can access those 401k funds or that retirement fund you have from your job or the other investment products that you've built wealth in over the years. Okay, so making sure we diversify your portfolio, you're building wealth in different places, you're taking advantage of the products that make the most sense for you and help you reach your goals at the right times. All of that is that wealth building strategy. And once we have that strategy in place, how do we preserve that wealth? That's where we're talking about estate planning. What do you want to leave behind for your loved ones or your church or a cause that's important to you? Putting in place a trust, a living will, those kind of things to make sure that your money goes where you want it to, that your estate avoids probate. Probate is an absolute nightmare for families. It costs a lot of money. Trying to do it on your own, I would not recommend. And the state's looking for every opportunity they can to take part of that estate and keep it. By protecting that within a trust, you take that off the table. And so your living will within your trust dictates who you want things to go to. Your trust avoids probate and everything moves smoothly at the point you graduate life. Now, I had Andre Pennington, one of my business partners. I had him on episode 9 and we talked about estate planning and about his story and about what he sees when he sits down with his clients. So if you want to go back and reference episode 9, please do. There's some great information in there. But here's the really important thing. And what I love most about Universal Wealth is we're not just another financial company. We're the financial company. And I say that with absolute confidence because we don't just have financial services. We have tax services. We have estate planning services. We have resources for debt management, for student loans. We have resources for P&C insurance. We have an athletic division for athletes and the special things they need to focus on and take care of as a part of their wealth plans. We have divisions that address every single aspect of finances that our clients can need. And why does that make us the company? Because when I create a relationship with a client, I don't have to refer them to somebody outside of my organization that I think is going to take good care of them. But if they don't, that reflects back on me. I get to refer them within my own company to the divisions that I know are going to focus on my client the exact same way I do, that are going to take care of them the exact same way that I do. All of that is built in-house. And then the last thing we're really looking at is that emergency fund. And really that kind of falls up in there in the increased cash flow, pay down debt, start building a savings. We're looking at your situation. The average emergency fund should be a minimum 3 months of income. Now, I recommend for married couples to have 6 months of income because more and more. And my personal experience was it's a 3 to 6 month gap in between jobs a lot of times to find that right position and not feel rushed into something just to pay the bills that you might be miserable at. And then you've got to just continue looking for the right job. So I tell my married clients or 2-income households, 6 months emergency fund. That means if one of you loses your job for 3 to 6 months, the other one's income is still coming in. You've only got to replace that other piece. And if it's 3 months, you don't eat up that entire savings, right? So having that 6 months in place for me just gives more confidence that you're going to be able to cover what you need to, whatever's going on. And if you're a single individual, a single income household, I recommend 12-month emergency fund. For me, I had 3 to 6 months at any given time. But when it took me 5 and 6 months to find a job, that's where at times I had to lean on those credit cards. And then because I'd used up my savings, and then I had to focus on paying down the credit cards and rebuilding that emergency fund. So look, the idea is to rebuild that emergency fund when you have to use it, but it's there for those real emergencies when they occur. But we don't want to have to focus on getting ourselves out of debt before we can rebuild that emergency fund, because emergencies happen when we least expect them. That's why they're called emergencies. And so sometimes life is lifing and you get hit back to back 2, 3 emergencies, and it can really set you behind. So I'm a big believer in having the high end of those emergency funds, 6 months for 2-income households, 12 months for a single income household. At the end of the day, I really wanted to focus on this conversation today because whatever your goals are, if it's to eliminate debt, care for a loved one, save for retirement, control your time, change your environment, travel the world, earn more money, fund your children's education, or absolutely anything else you could think of, we have the ability to help ensure that you build a foundation for financial success and to help you create the generational wealth and to leave the legacy that you want to leave behind at Universal Wealth. It's why I'm partnered with this company with my personal license. It's why I've partnered with them to create the athletic division within Universal Wealth, is because I know that we're doing the right things in the right ways. And so I hope that this information that I shared with you today helps you understand a little bit more of what I do when I sit down with my clients. It's not just a quick sit down, you're in and out in an hour with papers in your hand. It's a process of understanding, first and foremost, who you are. Secondly, what's most important to you. Third, where you are today. And fourth, where you want to be in the future. Jumping in the trenches with you and helping you build that dream of what you want to create down the road. And then, of course, to leave the legacy behind that's most important to you, to provide generational wealth for your family for generations to come, to change your last name forever. That's something we say all the time, but it's the truth. Every single one of us has the ability to do that. And I know I've mentioned it before, but this entire process that I just walked you through costs absolutely nothing. You do not have to have a minimum amount to invest to sit down with me or an agent at Universal Wealth. And you do not have to pay $50, $100, $200 an hour for my time to help you go through this process. We don't charge for this process that I walked through today. Our goal is to help you get the education you need, put things in place for your family, and then we're paid very well a commission from the providers, never out of your money that you invest or save. It never comes out of your money, but we're paid by the providers we work through for bringing clients to the table. But we provide you the tools to win at the financial freedom game for absolutely no cost. And it's because everybody needs this help and most aren't getting it. So I want to thank you for joining me today on the Nickels and Dimes podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and I look forward to continuing to bring you amazing content each week that will educate you, support you, and help you to find financial freedom. I look forward to having you listen and learn in future episodes. And until then, take care and stay safe.